Welcome back to Currently, the conversation where we go behind the headlines for in-depth conversations about the people, places, and sometimes the problems shaping Northwest Michigan. I'm Christal Frost, and today we're joined by Kevin Klein, Executive Director of Cherry Capital Airport, or TVC, the place to be right here in Traverse City. And over the past decade, TVC has seen incredible growth and is now preparing for one of the largest infrastructure additions in its history. Kevin, welcome to the conversation.
Love to be here. Thank you for having me.
So great to have you here. You and I go way back.
Yes, we do.
Always great to have you, and especially to have you on a microphone.
Well, I love it because we've gone, when you say we've gone way back, we've gone back many, many years, and you've created many, I'll call it opportunities. You said word problems. Opportunities. And I love the first one you ever created was we sent Vic McCarty to Philadelphia to run the stairs. And that was a challenge that has been repeated now several times with several trips.
I love
going
it.
Different things.
I love it.
It was awesome.
That's fantastic. Now, when are you going to send me to Boston to go to the Cheers bar?
Well, you know what? Let's go next summer. We've got it. We've got all kinds of opportunities. Let's do it.
I love it. Well, we are going to talk a lot about that growth with TVC Cherry Capital Airport. And I kind of want to start with that story, like talking about the big picture. And Cherry Capital has seen, it's been more than a decade, right? You have seen passenger counts more than double, and the airport continues to break records year after year. So you are, the person who's holding the crystal ball, but also you're like, you have a lot of data. What is driving this surge in travelers?
Well, this, when you go back 2011, coming out of that 2008 to 2010 economic downturn was really where we started. Mm-hmm. And so 2011 is that period of time that we use as our measurement till today. So what has caused that change? Well, I think there was two things. In that first period, we did have a lot of tourists coming into northern Michigan and seeing what we were all about and having, that opportunity to visit. But that captured those people, and they've, bought second homes. So we had the tourism population, the second homeowners. But what has really changed, and then COVID kind of created that dynamic also, is people decided to relocate in northern Michigan. And they're from all over the country and the world. And when they started relocating and making this their home, we also saw then the locals looking at the opportunities to travel. So what changed in that time frame? We went from 3 carriers to 7 carriers. We went from 5 nonstops to 20 nonstops.
Wow.
And so when you look at the opportunity to travel, then people started saying, hey, well, it's convenient to travel. The prices are economic. We brought in low-cost carriers like Allegiant, and that changed that dynamic. So people then weren't just traveling once a year.
Yeah.
They were traveling 6 to 10 times a year. So we recently did a little survey of the study. Who is really traveling out of Cherry Capital Airport? And years ago, I used to tell everybody at the Pure Michigan campaign, we were the Pure Michigan Airport.
Right.
Because of the number of tourists going through. That dynamic flipped. It actually surprised me. And so that dynamic flipped in the fact that people within 50 miles of the airport make up over 365,000 trips out of our last year's record of 787,000 total passengers. And so that's just people within 50 miles. Those are our locals. So we then took that analysis and went further and said, well, how many of the total tourists of our region that are coming into our region are coming through the airport? So we looked into that. And the people that are getting on board at the airport, we're only seeing 3% of the total tourist volume. That means the tourists that are coming into our area are actually traffic that are coming in. So we're capturing some of that. But what's driving or flying,
I like that word,
is, and I, per the name of the road, drive or fly don't drive. Yeah. So what's flying our traffic is the locals. It's really the insurgent of that local traveler that is coming and really making our traffic work. So that percentage, I can't call us the Pure Michigan anymore, Michigan Airport anymore, because we now see over 53% of our travelers are from the Traverse City, Grand Traverse County, and Leelanau County area.
You mentioned COVID being one of those factors that really changed maybe the composition of who was traveling and who was moving to Northwest Michigan. And I recall talking to people who remote policies came in. They got to pick wherever they wanted to live. You saw lots of people who maybe grew up here who finally went, yeah, I can live here. But the key factor to these remote work policies for people maybe who wanted to move to a different states was that you had to have a good airport. You did. And you had already created that. That had already been created. So you kind of already, the foundation was already there, right?
Well, it was. And that foundation came from things that you and I have talked about for years, is whether we're a tourist destination or whether we're a business destination, we want that business to happen here in Northern Michigan. That has always been our philosophy. If people are leaving here to fly to Florida for vacations or to fly to Florida to conduct business, that means business is not being done here. So our philosophy was to change that, to bring people into our center, whether they're moving here for a permanent and becoming local, whether they were moving here to establish a new business. All of that is about driving us as the destination. And that has always been my focus, is to make us the priority, to make people want to be here. Because when whatever reason you're here, for business or pleasure, you're spending money in our economy. And that is what our success comes from, is it drives our businesses downtown. It drives people to invest in entrepreneur opportunities. It really makes us grow as a region. And when we're doing that, you can look at how the healthcare system grows, how our school systems grow, and then it translates into other type of tourism that does come around. And so that has been our priority, is who's the destination. And it's not about taking our travelers out. That's a bonus to us. It's about bringing everybody in to do business. And so when you do that, you're rewarded by great medical systems. You're rewarded by great school systems. You're rewarded by that community that really makes that happen. And it makes it fun then when you go travel.
Yeah, and when I'm thinking about traveling too, the old days of your parents would get 2 weeks off in the summertime and you would do your one vacation a year, and that's what you had. That was the whole thing. And now there's such it's just sort of combined business and pleasure, or business and leisure. I think you call it bleisure, right? Yeah. You actually do, because people are tacking on the ability in their business trips to bring the fam, to spend a couple extra days to explore. That's a trend that's not going away anytime soon.
We see that quite a bit. And that's bi-directional traffic, though. We see it especially coming into our region. So those that are coming to do business, they stay, for a long weekend. And we've seen that benefit with our occupancy rooms in our hotels and different things there. But we're also seeing it from our professional traveler. And so our professional traveler is doing the same thing. They go out someplace else and stay, but they're also doing what I call a reverse road warrior trip. And so our road warriors prior to COVID would get on board Monday morning, travel all week long, and then come back Thursday night or Friday morning. But what's happening is they might go out and do business Monday through Thursday, but then because we have flights to Florida and they then go to Florida for the weekend and have a long weekend Thursday through Monday.
And warm up.
And do those different things. And so we're seeing a lot of this different trends to be able to do it. So people now, because they can work anywhere, will work during the week and then get on board and travel and have fun on the weekend. So with the ability to have nonstop flights, the ability to go for a long weekend is now here, where in the past, prior to 2011, we didn't have that.
I have to just give a shout out to nonstop flights because my husband, who I love, does not like to fly, and I love to travel. If I can tell him, hey, you get to get on one plane and that's it, it's one flight, he's like, all right, I'm in.
All right.
So thank you for that, because it's really opened up doors for us as well. Now, when you're thinking about all this growth, that automatically, anytime you're going to have a lot of growth, you're going to have some growing pains. And the current terminal was built in what, 2004?
Correct. October of 2004, we opened our doors.
Oh, wow. So, that was designed for like 300,000 annual passengers. You just told me that just local people alone every year, there's like 365,000 people
Correct.
who are. So that in itself, even though you have like 738 or something thousand, you're handling over 700,000 design, in a facility that was designed for 300,000. So, you're literally running out of space.
Yes, we really manage on square inches, not square feet. And so when you look at that, it's absolutely true. Our capacity has been exceeded, and we've done a lot of different things to relieve that capacity. We really looked at different points of service that we can channel people through at different times of day. So one of the first things we did is we worked with the airlines to stretch the schedule out throughout the day. And so instead of being so much focused on block times in the morning, block times in the afternoon, late afternoon and evening, no, we stretched that out through the day. So we spread the traveler out through the day. Then we worked with TSA at the checkpoint. So in 2022, we expanded from 2 lanes going through to 3. We also then did a revitalization in our baggage screening area where we updated our what were used to be called CTX 5500s to reveal 80. So the throughput of checked baggage being screened went almost double at that particular time. So we put in the logistical mechanisms to move people through the building quicker and faster. The other thing that we had to do, and we completed this in 2023, is we expanded our actual air carrier ramp out 130 feet each side.
I remember that.
What that opened up is then when these flights come in, we have parking spaces that can handle them until gates are open. And so we would time and circulate that. So in 2024, then we started saying we got to get a little more logistical into that planning. And we started looking into programs like AeroCloud, which is a gate management system to manage our gates. You normally don't see that at an airport of our size. It's usually done at a hub airport. But we put that philosophy in because, again, we're fighting for every square inch. So we could best maximize our gate usage. We put that into place. Then we had to purchase, buses from Beta.
Oh, wow.
So they were a great partner of ours, and we were able to get some surplus buses from Beta, and we utilized that. So at some points throughout the summer in 2025, we had used buses to offload and load to keep managing people through the building so we weren't violating any fire codes or anything along those lines.
Oh, just that little thing.
Yeah, just that little thing. So we had to maximize that terminal space to do that. Other things that we did is, of course, we maximized seating and different things. We also did some adjustments in our cafe, and then we expanded the outdoor seating that was in the cafe.
Oh, yeah.
So with the Cherry Country Cafe and Gifts, Ron and Cindy Limcool, they contributed to make sure we had seating that was attractive, not just waiting for the airplane, but maybe having a beverage or a sandwich out on in the garden area. So that opened up some more opportunities to diversify where people were going. And so with that balance, we've now hit the point where you can't go anymore. You have to have additional square feet and to add that square feet. So what our plan is to really look at, and we studied this. We went out and we started studying this really prior to COVID. It was about 2018 that we started getting the information together. And we put an analysis as what do we need? What is it that we need? The amount of square footage, the amount of amenities, and we looked at that. And we have to do that from a standards point of view with the FAA. And one of the most difficult parts of that standard is people often think when you master plan, you do all this, you're doing all these forecast projections of growth and everything, and you're going to plan for that growth. But that's not how federal funding works. That's all how you have to plan for what you're doing today. So it's the standards. And when you do that, we applied that formula in the gates and the number of activities, and we review peak hour capacity, we review annual capacity, we review it all. And what it came in that report told us is we needed 14 gates.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so today we have 5. Okay. So that was, and it was an awesome report.
Yeah.
However, when you look at what 14 gates would cost and how do you get from today's 5 to that 14 gates, you can't just go for it all at one
Right.
time. So what we had to do is we said, we came up with the design that has the current building is a T-shaped. If you look
Yep.
at it from above, we are going to change it into the shape of an E.
Okay.
So we have what we call the westernmost concourse is Concourse A. The new concourse that's being planned and to be built is Concourse B. A future concourse would be Concourse C. And then we've master planned for additional space. So it all heads to the east. So if you're thinking about the airport, where would Concourse B be located? And that'd be north of the employee lot. So if you're on that parking lot that's east of the terminal, it'd be just north of that area. So it's there. So when we looked at that and we said to the FAA, hey, we'd like the 14 gates, the FAA said, whoa, wait a second. We just went through COVID, re-update your forecast, re-update everything. So we did that. So we repeated really the study twice. And when we did that, that forecast still revealed we needed that many gates. So what we did then is we said, let's look at building Concourse B first with 4 gates, add it to the 4 or the 5 that we have now, and then balance that out. And really look at that overall design, and then we'll proceed with, in the future, 2038 timeframe, looking at that possible 3rd concourse. And so we then invested into what we call Gates to the Future, and that's the project that we have today. And so we're adding that B concourse. But the best part about this and deciding on how many gates and everything else is we went to the airlines and asked them, for your business model, how many gates do you need? And without giving them the information from our FAA report, they all came back with 14 gates.
Oh, wow.
All right.
That's a magic number.
Yeah, it's really solid on that number. But the interesting thing is so then now we're going through airline negotiations at this point to balance out what we're going to have. 2 of our carriers alone so what we'll have is 8 jet bridges to start. A 9th one will be added just after we open that Concourse B. So when that happens, we have 2 carriers that already said to us, well, we'd like 4 gates each.
Oh my gosh.
So that's some of our adjustments. So it's the sandbox.
Yeah.
We got to give everybody a little space and balance that out. And that's what airports do is we create that sandbox for everyone.
I just have to say, number one, way to go on trying to figure out logistics and what must have been kind of a nightmare of being like, how can we stretch this out? Where can we put people? Let's get some buses. All the things that you're doing to problem solve. Then you're going, okay, we really do need to add this addition. And, that's what we're looking at right now. And in addition to the addition, you have to have parking spaces for that. Like if you're talking about 53% of the travelers live here, most of them, and maybe not most, but I would say most of them are driving their cars and they need long-term parking. So you're adding 350 spaces, right?
Yes.
By the end of this year.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the first thing. That's going to ease some congestion already for travelers. And then I have to ask a question that I think people are asking, which is, well, why don't you just take this opportunity to move the entire airport somewhere else? And I want to give credit to the thinking behind that, because if you go to other cities, most of their airports are going to be outside of the city center. But that was something that was planned a long time ago. And here we are with our beautiful airport. Tell me about the reasons why that might not be a good possibility.
Well, back in 1935, let's begin there.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Actually, our airport was built outside of the city in 1935.
Yeah, okay.
And so if you go back to the historical documents, the first thing that our forefathers or whatever you want to say said, the airport's it was about 2 miles outside of the city center. And they said, it will never succeed. It's too far out.
It's too far out. It was 2 miles.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at that time, it was really interesting to hear those historical reports. Typically, when you look at airports being built nearby a population center, that population center will drive exactly what we see today, the local growth. However, if you move an airport outside of that, you will lose that population center going to that particular airport. So from that standpoint, once you get basically the philosophy is once you're on the road, you can go anywhere you want to go. So you look at that. So that was studied multiple times from 1935 through 1996 when the decision was made by the airport commission at the time to build the south turn.
Okay.
So a lot of those factors is if we move the airport, where does it go? What happens? And so that brought the rumors up of, we'll build an airport over in Kalkaska.
Okay.
Or we'll build an airport, in Buckley or wherever it might have been. There was all these different rumors that said, let's move it. But no one ever considered what it would take to move the airport. And so you look at what is the amount of land that's needed first. And in today's standard, the roadways of Garfield Road, South Airport Road, 3 Mile Road, and Parsons go through our current clear zones. In tomorrow's world or moving an airport, you could not do that. No roadways could go through. So our 1,100-acre site would now at a minimum would be close to 4,000 acres.
Would have to be. Okay.
It'd have to be flat.
Oh.
There's not much land in northern Michigan that's flat.
4,000 acres.
4,000 acres.
Okay.
And you have environmental concerns of wetlands, forest issues, all kinds of stuff that where are we going to find 4,000 acres of land that is not impacted that? Then you start adding costs of just building it. Those costs to build a runway of 7,000 feet or greater today is a $500 million.
Just for one?
Just for one, from scratch. So you got to look at how runways are built. And that's a very conservative estimate in what we're seeing across the country today. We'd need 2 of those. So there's $1 billion right. We haven't made any taxiways yet. So you got to build taxiways, you got to build ramps, aprons, all of that to go with it. You got to build a terminal building. This $120 million concourse edition.
Oh my gosh.
Now you would have to build all of that, plus the main terminus, power plants, etc., fire station, maintenance buildings. That's just for the airport infrastructure. Now you have tenant infrastructure that has to be built. So when you put that tab together to move an airport, the environmental, you're talking at around $5 billion just to build it. The other part of that is anytime an airport is moved, the FAA does an evaluation of its grants. Depending on the age of the grants, the FAA has the ability to require, going back to 1935, the repayment of every grant dollar that was used for this site.
Really?
Yes, that is correct. So if we did that going back to 1935, that is just shy of $1 billion.
So that's another $1 billion.
So that's another $1 billion. So it'd be close to $6 billion to move the airport. Now,
and that's barring if you can find flat land, 4,000 acres of flat land, and not have to, disturb wetlands and remove tons of trees and all that.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And so you have all of those challenges. Now, here's the next challenge. And this is the one that really kind of just takes it off the table, is to build it, then we would have to finance it ourselves. That means us locally. That means the local taxpayer. Currently, the airport receives no local taxpayer dollars. And so you would have to fund that because the FAA has said, we've already invested in a location. You're choosing to move it. You pay for it. So that when you look at a $5 billion or $6 billion price tag on the taxpayers, that's not, pardon the pun, it's not going to fly. So, and so that is a challenge that really, when you look at it, plus then you have to mitigate the site that you're on. It's been a site that's goes back to World War II. And so, people are like, let's look at it to put housing on. Let's look at to do all that. to be able to do anything like that and to mitigate all of that, it's almost an impossibility.
It just doesn't seem.
It's just not practical.
Right.
And so you look at all that, and it's the same conclusion that people and master planners have come to before. So what have we seen is what happens, though. Let's say we were to be able to achieve that financial dollar and move the airport someplace. Well, what happens to every airport? People move out to it. Denver's a great example. Denver International was in Stapleton, was downtown Denver, and everybody was like, it's not big enough. We have to move it. They moved it 35 miles outside of town. They had 54 square miles of land, and guess what Denver did? It moved out to the airport.
Oh, wow.
And that's what typically happens when you see it. It happened here because we built the airport a couple miles out. Everybody thought it's out of our backyard. It's in the, it's not in our backyard. It's out of town. And they even thought it wouldn't succeed.
But then
the airport, the community has built around it and continues to this day.
Well, I mean, you mentioned something about, people going where the airport is, and like it builds its own sort of ecosystem around it. And I think that's important to note too about how, the growth it's a regional impact. And I think that there's been a lot of conversation about the loss of the small town feel of Traverse City. And sometimes that is pointed at the airport. It's pointed at hotels. It's pointed at, too many people are coming here. And I don't know that that's a fair assessment. I don't think it's fair for someone to say it's all because of, Kevin and his airport, or because of, Trevor Tkach and his hotels. That is not a fair assessment. However, you have done, I think, a really good job of understanding those concerns and trying to balance community character with the need for an addition, with the need for growth. You've done this really, really interestingly. You have a lot of community involvement, first of all, and I've seen that. But also even the way the airport feels when you walk into it, it feels like Traverse City. So can you talk a little bit about that, about how you can balance that? You are looking at growth. You are looking at having additions, the one that is planned for, for the next concourse, but then there's probably more. But maintaining the charm, I think, is what people are really getting to.
Well, I think you said the first word. It's community.
Yeah.
When you look at whatever we're doing at the airport, it's the whole focus is about community and the impact to the community. So we want to balance that in a lot of different ways. So let's look at the public input side of it. So one of the biggest things that I think we really did with this Gates to the Future project is community engagement. And what we did is we planned multiple sessions, 3 particular highlighting sessions, one in Traverse City. We did it at the library. We did another one in Sutton's Bay for Leelanau County, and we did another out in Gaylord to really try to get what does Northern Michigan want out of their major airport, and what is it that needs to be either built here, in within the building, or how do we need to develop that? Then we also went to, I would say, smaller touch points, but to various township meetings. Garfield Township, East Bay Township, specifically to ask, okay, you're our neighbors. What is it? What is it to feel about the airport? What do you want to see? And so by doing that, we drew in lots of community input. And then lastly, we spoke at various sessions, township associations, airport associations. We even spoke at the Economic Forum and the Annual Economic Summit by Traverse Connect. And really, we tried to get our information out as much as we possibly could on what we would like to do. We also then developed our website with all the information so people could see those presentations and have all that information there. So what it drew back is we had over 300 comments of a variety of sources. And what was interesting is the comments focused on the character of Northern Michigan. And so we wanted to continue that theme. The current terminal is a Frank Lloyd Wright Prairie style design. And that really came from inspiration from former airport director Steve Cassens, who thought Frank Lloyd Wright was an awesome architect. And absolutely, it really shows. Yeah. So he had that passion, and that passion translated into the terminal. We want to continue that passion because that creates that up north Michigan resort theme, our home. It's everything we like it to be, the fireplace, the coziness. And so we want to continue that. And as we look into the design of Concourse B, we've looked at the Sleeping Bear Dunes. It's kind of that theme to carry a lot of the earth tones that we already have, add some of the water to it that we've seen, the environmental characteristics, and still keep with that Frank Lloyd Wright esque kind of design.
And how about like a giant indoor sandbox?
Well, I think I love this idea.
I think it's great.
But I am trying to work a water feature in there.
Okay, we'll take water instead of sand.
But the sand is going to come out in all the walkways. And the design of all the walkways to the gate.
Yeah.
We're also going to bring in a kind of like called the covered bridge that you see as you go on the scenic drive. So we have that aspect to connect. Another aspect is to bring in the northern lights. As Frank Lloyd Wright loves the stained glass, we're going to look to bring in some of that type of stained glass. So as you walk down, the greens, the purples, and everything walks with you. And so some of that will really bring back that community aspect. But the number one thing that everybody asks for in the terminal is a bar.
I mean, hey.
There you go.
Yes.
We got to have that bar.
We got to have a bar.
And so, of course, the concessions that are there, we want to make sure the concessions are there and are strong. And, we have a great concessionaire now with Cherry Country Cafe and Gift. And so that hopefully will go into the future. We've seen their investments. They just invested $1.2 million into the current facility to expand their kitchen areas, food storage, etc. So we'll see them long into the future into this investment. And that bar scene will definitely, the availability of products and local products, again, getting back to what we sell at the building is that local product. And so that will bring that charm to have that opportunity.
Will you call it the sun catcher too?
How much
I love the sun catcher.
I know. Trademarks. I don't know. Patents. I don't know who's that. But that has always been a passion, to bring that out. The other thing that people wanted is plugs.
Oh yeah.
I got to plug my cell phone in. I got to plug my computer and get that last second charge.
Yeah.
And so that has been an amenity that has been there. And then other things like business quiet spaces, that arose to the top. People wanted another fireplace that was involved. So that a feature like that will be looked to be put into place. So overall, we've brought a lot of community input in, and we're going to look at even some art that will be put in, whether it is a wall mural or hanging art, or so that will represent our local area.
I love it.
So lots of great features that will be of our local taste.
So it's a community airport and with reflections of the community. And I know you're very involved in the community. So, I mean, it kind of, I don't know, that's one thing that I think really does stand out about Cherry Capital TVC Airport is that it is a fixture right here in the community, and it shows.
Oh, thank you.
It really does.
Thank you.
Plus, you have, you have nonstop flights. So as I said before, thank you. Get the bar, we're good.
We got the bar, the nonstop flights. There you go. What
That'll
else could
be great.
you ask for?
There you go. There's a couple of things that I wanted to ask about the Addition project. And number one, I know you recently went in front of the Grand Traverse County Commission. This was such an interesting. It was interesting for me to watch this, Kevin, because going to the commission to talk about using their bond rating, and a lot of folks kind of scratched their head and said, "Well, why would that have to happen?" Well, the airport has largely ran without any sort of deficit. Like you don't have any debt.
There's no debt.
There's no debt. So when you don't have debt, and any person out there can understand this. If you don't have any debt and you need to take out a loan, it's kind of hard to get approval. You go, oh wait, but you don't have any credit rating for the bond as well. So that you want to use the Grand Traverse County, I think they have a AAA plus bond rating, AA plus bond rating. And, you've put in a lot of, we talked about this on Currently News Roundup, you put in a lot of provisions, to make sure that they felt comfortable with this. There's obviously a whole, couple of decades of success and growth. But that was really an interesting factor for me. I went, oh, okay, well, that does make sense.
Well, it's typical of airports. So when you become debt-free, in which we paid off our bonds from the previous terminal, there's about $3 million. But really, we've maintained a debt-free environment for many, many years. So when you go to a bond rating, sure, you can get a rating.
Sure.
It's relatively conservative, and so you don't get the best rate. So by asking Grand Traverse County to pledge their full faith and credit does not put any money onto the taxpayers. That's number one. People confuse that.
It's not going to cost us anything in our taxes.
No, absolutely not. And so what it does is then it's an assurance to those bonds, on those bonds, that provides a level of protection that says, if there was ever a failure, Grand Traverse County would be there. But how did they get their bond rating in the first place? It's through economic development. It's through the number of taxpayers that have come into the area, all of which has expanded because of the airport. The airport's a very important part of their bond rating. So without having the airport, would they have the AA plus? I mean, I don't know. I don't see that. So having the airport here really drives their bond rating. Now, with that said, we're looking for that support. What does that make the difference of? So the project is $120 million. 50% of the project's being funded through federal dollars that come from the users of the airport. Okay. So that's your ticket taxes, et cetera, that's on that. That comes from the users of the airport. The other 50% or $60 million comes through some type of federal bond program or federal loan program. And so we need to borrow that amount of money. And so what's estimated on that $60 million is $60 million construction costs. Then you have finance costs of about $11 million for $71 total million. If we weren't to get the full faith and credit, you would have to add another $16.2 million onto that, or you would have to then deduct $16.2 million from what you could build. So it would impact either way. So with that saying, is if the full faith and credit comes in play, then that support allows more flexibility. If it doesn't, it almost then puts it back on the users of the airport to pay that additional amount, which, okay, if they did that, but it's almost a tax to the users of the airport. It's almost a tariff to the users of the airport. So with that said, then what we look for that support to relieve that, then you put bond ordinances together to protect the county if, let's say, there was a failure to pay the bonds. So two things are put in there, two rate covenants that we call out. Number one, the rate covenant is we set our rates and charges annually by ordinance. When we do that, our rates and charges have to be high enough to pay the bond. So therefore, we should never have any issue paying our bonds because our rates and charges to our tenants, the users of the airport, will always be sufficient enough to pay for the bond.
Okay.
And the operation of the airport. All right. So one, if we fail there, that's one principle that won't allow us to fail. So the second principle is we have to have a reserve account, a bond reserve that's equal to 125% of an annual payment. Okay. So you have these two statutes before you. If you get to that point, then to hit those, that is when full faith and credit would have to be. That would mean almost a complete and devastating failure of the airport itself.
Right.
And so here's my one challenge with it. The airport authority was created by Leelanau County and Grand Traverse County. The airport authority owns the land of the airport. The counties think about them as like the parent. So at the end of the day, if an utter failure of the airport happened, it would go back to the two counties. So as a taxpayer of the two counties, why would I want to have an additional $16.2 million come back to me, where you could put your full faith and credit board and eliminate that. If that was the worst case scenario, however, we're talking doomsday.
Yeah, right.
That's not what happens.
No.
With the airport, our airport has successful growth. We went in, and even our conservative projections on paying on the bonds offers us no issue. We've always paid our bills.
Yeah.
We've always been, and we have no debt. We have no taxpayer income or taxpayer impact. And even other things, when you look at the health, is, well, you have pension funds and everything else, and our pension is solid. We've paid up, so we are financially healthy. We are financially growing, and we're growing at a rate of right now in 2025 at about 24%. All our conservative projections for financing are running in that 2 to 4% range for going forward. So when you look at all this, it's about economic development. Who do you want to invest in economic development? And our county offers so many resources to do that. And this full faith and credit is utilized to get that. People say, well, where else do they use full faith and credit? One of your biggest things that full faith and credit is used on is multiple township water sewer projects.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So when you look at infrastructure development and how that benefits the growth of the community and everything else, we fit in that category.
Okay.
And it's really comes back to who wants to invest in the airport economic growth. And that's the bottom line. It is a well-made investment when you look at it. And it's also something that pays back for our community. So when we look at, who is using the airport, we talked about the growth. That growth is those voters coming in and saying, make this our home, make this our airport, make this. And so we want to make sure all of that is here for our community. It comes back to the community.
It comes back to the community. And by the way, I don't have a AA plus bond rating. But I do have like a B- bond rating. You can have it.
There you go. We'll take it. We'll take it. And I think that's just important to our community is, and when you evaluate what happens and the impact, one of the questions that comes up is with the county's other projects going on, how does it impact with the amount? When will that impact the county's credit rating for where they might have to pay a higher rate? And so their financial advisors in the ticker have said that would be county could borrow up to $150 million plus the $71 million from the airport. So you're talking over $200 million before there's really any type of
big issue. Yeah.
And so but even that, as the county's growing, that issue offsets after 3 years. Our impact on the full faith and credit drops.
Right.
You have all these factors that make it, and it's pretty much,
it seems like a pretty cut and dry sound investment. I mean, I'm very glad that the commissioners are doing their due diligence.
Absolutely.
And, looking at everything. But, as Beth Milligan in the ticker reported, it does look as though both sides financially are going, this seems like a good idea.
It is a good idea.
It does. Before we go, I want to ask you about some fun stuff.
Okay.
Now, first of all, there's some new, what new destinations or nonstop routes are you most excited about right now?
Well, let's go back to Boston.
Oh, yes.
First of all,
I've never been. I have to go.
With JetBlue coming in,
yes,
adding our 7th airline, that is exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, JetBlue to me has been one of those airlines I've always wanted to see because it offers two aspects. One, it's in that low cost area, but it's also a product that a lot of business travelers love to use. And so JetBlue, I think there's opportunities not only in the Boston market, the New York market, I think even in some of the Florida markets for JetBlue over time to grow for us is there. So that I have to say that's Boston, East Coast, JetBlue, American and Delta also serve Boston. So that's kind of unique. Out of all the Boston markets, there's only 23 markets total, and they have probably 300 plus markets out of Boston that actually have that kind of competition on it.
Fun.
Traverse City's one of them. So
that's cool.
So that's really cool. So Boston to me is one of the up and coming markets that I think from what we have. Another one that we have is Houston that continues to grow. We opened that 2 years ago. And, I'm sad to report when we opened it 2 years ago in that summer, we did not sell out of all the seats. We missed selling 14.
You only have 14 seats?
So we got to do better.
All right.
But what's most important is that we had a grant that was helping to support the risk of that grant. We never touched a dime of that. So hopefully there's more things to come in the future for use of that. So we'll see with that. But what do we look at? What are we looking at for new cities? That's always everybody. Shake the crystal ball and see what you're going to shake
I'm going to see, I bet you everybody wants to see Vegas.
Yep.
Right? Is that on the list?
It's probably the number one city I hear every day.
Nonstop to Vegas. I don't know. What else would be on the list.
So when we look up at our top 5 markets that are out there, on an annual basis. Of course, Chicago is top. We see that all the time. So having another connection or another airport in Chicago would be awesome. Chicago Midway would be a great opportunity. So we look at that option. You said Las Vegas. That's always up there. But in the top 5, then we start looking at Denver. We have nonstop to Denver, and that's growing twice a day in the summertime. That extended to December 1st. Dallas, it's seeing twice a day service on the weekends, and it's grown to an Airbus 321 with 192 seats. So we're seeing that taken care of. Then the next cities that come in are L.A. and San Francisco.
I was going to say, I bet L.A. is on the list.
Yeah, so L.A., San Francisco are on the list. So we will see where they fall into place. And then as you start going down, pretty much with our 29 stop, we have the who's of major metropolitan areas. So that starts to think about, okay, what are what I would call your secondary type cities? A Nashville could be on
that would be so much fun.
That could be on that list. A St. Louis,
yes,
could be on that list. Cincinnati would be another one that could offer some things that are closer by. Other things that when you look at our hub carriers, Delta being one of them, we have flights to Minneapolis. We have a lot of flights to their Boston and LaGuardia, their Atlanta hub, which Atlanta's starting earlier next year on May 23rd, which is about 6 weeks earlier than last year. So that is awesome. But when you look at what other hubs now out west can you look at, Salt Lake City might be another option. So in the crystal ball, there's a lot of things that are percolating. When we look at the 29 stops that we have now, we have been working on these since 2011.
Oh, wow.
So we do these community presentations to the airlines, and then we meet at various meetings and conferences, and we continue to promote what our city is doing, what our community is doing, the businesses are doing. Are they adding more employees? Are they adding additional destinations? A great example is Haggerty. Haggerty has our hometown base here, but they have training centers across the country. Denver, others in Ohio. I believe they have some over in Europe. That's important for an airline to know where those training centers are. Same thing like Interlochen with the school, bringing in all the students. Where are these students are coming from for those 2-week changeovers and making those connections and how long they're staying.
And the faculty.
Yes, because we have a worldwide faculty that comes in.
Absolutely.
So it's all about providing that type of service and putting that data in front of the airlines to make sure that we're at top of mind, we're at top of choice, that they want to serve our community. Because what has really changed in the airline business, in the 1990s when I started in the airline, with working for an airline to today, you used to see the airlines not making profits. And they struggled. And when they made a profit, it was celebrated, and Wall Street thought it was great and everything else. In the 2000s, after 9/11 and everything else, Wall Street had a very conservative approach, and you saw mergers and bankruptcies all happen with the airlines. And Wall Street said, no more capacity overload. And you saw capacity cuts in the industry. And so things were on the downside. But what it changed is now finally the industry is profitable. So it's not who can make money for the airlines, but what city makes more money for the airlines than the next city.
Oh, Oh, okay.
So we're not only competing for airline service, we're competing to make sure we're top of mind because the airlines only have so many finite airplanes. So if they can make money everywhere, it's where they can make the most
money. So you're competing with other cities.
Absolutely.
Well, that's something I didn't know.
Yeah. So that's why we tell everybody, fly from nearby, fly from Traverse City. That translates to not only more seats in the market, lower airfare, but it also translates into grant dollars that come to the airport, passenger facility charge, all that improves the local airport by flying nearby.
And then you can get to Vegas.
And then you can get to Vegas.
Exactly.
And we're working on it.
I know you are, Kevin.
That is one I dream about.
Yeah.
And I think if we get Vegas, I think there's a lot of people that are going to join me on that first trip.
I think so too. I would say that'll be a trip. I would also put on the list if we can get to New Orleans.
All right.
That would be great. Let's put it on the list.
It's on the list.
Just be fun.
Is on the list. New Orleans would be great.
Now, before we say goodbye, it is the holidays just around the corner. And people who have been, especially me, I grew up here. A lot of our listeners have been in this community for many, many, many years. And they still think, you don't have to wait the 3 hours. You don't have to show up 3 hours early. Okay, I just want to be really intentional in saying this. There's a lot of people flying from TVC Cherry Capital Airport. We went through the numbers. A lot of them are local. A lot of them are visitors, but they're there.
Oh, absolutely.
So you don't want to just come flying in, 20 minutes before your flight leaves. That you will not make it.
Yeah, that you'll struggle.
Yeah.
Struggle. So we're telling everybody in the holiday season, we ask everybody to be there 2 hours early.
Yeah, and that is doable.
Yep. And so, and the reason you got to think about it is if you're checking bags, you come into the counter, you have to wait in line. You check your bag, you leave there, you wait in line for security, get through security. And if there is a volume of people there, that's going to slow you down.
It's going to slow you down.
So coming early, and if you get there on a moment that just expedites you right through, that means you deserve to stop in at Cherry Country Cafe and get a scone or a piece of pie or a coffee or a drink. And take a time to enjoy that little moment of peace.
And maybe when you have the new concourse, you can go to the bar.
That's right. You'll have a full bar, full restaurant.
Love it.
It's awesome.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today. Kevin Klein, Executive Director of Cherry Capital TVC Airport. We're going to be watching closely as the addition unfolds and as TVC continues to shape the future of Northern Michigan. Kevin, thanks for being a part of the conversation.
I love it. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks. High five.